Yeah. Dr. James J.C. Cooley. The James Cooley Show. It's your life. Yeah.
Hello, welcome to the James Cooley Show. It's your life. I'm your host, Dr. James J.C. Cooley, and wow, I am so excited about the show today because we kind of got a new host for today's show, and this young lady right here, and she's been doing so many wonderful things for so many wonderful people, and we're kicking off a 4-part series called Bridges Beyond Grief, but today we're going to be talking about, and I know Michelle going to get mad at me for talking about the bridge of forgiveness, but, you know, it's so much that I think we all need to get an understanding because things happen in our life and tragedies happen in our life. And many times we don't know how to deal with it, or we have this hatred in us and et cetera. But I tell you what, Paula, how you doing today? We got about 4 minutes before we we got about 40 seconds before we throw the
well, then I'll tell you real quick. I'm doing great, and I'm so excited about what we're doing here and our guest today, who is an incredible, super human being. Incredible.
Wow, I'm excited about this, Michelle. We'll talk on the other side, but hey, Todd, man, I'm excited about the show. Can we get ready to lock all of the different platforms in? Can we do it?
Yes, I'm ready to lock in the 6 to 8 million different platforms here. 4, 3, 2, 1. We're locking it in.
It's Your Life is sponsored by James J.C. Cooley.
Dr. James J.C. Cooley.
Hello, welcome to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and I'm your host, Dr. James J.C. Cooley. And I tell you what, we got an absolutely fantastic show coming your way today. And, you know, that executive producer of ours, Michelle Cooley, has put together another absolutely fantastic show. But I also want to introduce you to the host for at least for the next 4 weeks of today's show is my great friend, Paula Shaw. And she does so many great things. And Michelle going to introduce her. Well, she might want to do something, but we got an absolutely fantastic show, and this guest that we have on, and you know, I'm looking forward to hearing the story because just reading and doing the research, I mean, love that shows that love is real when you can come together with things that normally doesn't happen, and you're able to forgive. So I'm excited about today's show. Michelle, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I love having Paula on the show. She brings a amazing and professional perspective on the topic of grief and loss. So we're really excited to have her, as well as this amazing guest who we're going to talk to and hear his story, his journey, and things he's been doing.
Well, let's talk to the host right now. How you doing, Paula Shaw? How you doing?
I'm doing great, JC. I am so delighted that we created this concept because grief is such a huge issue in people's lives. It's such a wipeout, and sometimes it almost ends their lives. And they need to know there are bridges, different kinds of bridges out there that can get you to the other side of the pain so that you can come back into being alive and being productive and being in your life. So I'm excited about what we get to share with our listeners.
I'm excited, and audience, in case you did not know what the series that's starting today is the beginning of Bridges Beyond Grief. And Michelle going to give you a little bit more information on it, but I want everybody to put their hands together for Paula Shaw because she's making it happen.
Love that. Love that. The thousands of people in the studio listening.
Hey, Michelle, can you please introduce the title of the show, purpose of the show, and introduce this great guest? And we're going to start with that.
Yes. The title of today's show is called The Bridge of Forgiveness. And Paula Shaw, who's a life transition expert, grief specialist, keynote speaker, and author, joins us with a sit-down interview with Azim Khamisa. He's an acclaimed inspirational keynote speaker, workshop leader, and consulting. We're going to talk about surviving the agony of loss, child loss, finding a bridge beyond the pain of the loss, the power of forgiveness, finding meaning in life through service to others. So Azim Khamisa, again, he's an acclaimed inspirational keynote speaker, workshop leader, consultant, and board member. He's been recognized by esteemed figures, including Dalai Lama, former President Clinton, and Al Gore. In 1995, after the loss of his son, Tariq, to gang-related incident, he chose the path of compassion and forgiveness. He founded the Tariq Khamisa Foundation. The foundation creates safer schools and communities through educating and inspiring children in the restorative principles of accountability and compassion. Since then, Azim has touched millions with his message of forgiveness, peace, and leadership. And he's going to talk to you more about what he's doing, his story, and the amazing impact he's had on the community. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Azim Khamisa.
Yeah, Michelle. His last name is Khamisa.
Khamisa. Oh, okay.
Azim is an incredible man that I met quite a while back, and I was so blown away with his story that when we decided to launch this series, he was the first name I thought of because I thought he exemplifies everything that we hope to do with this series, which in my mind, one of what we really want to do is spotlight people who have dealt with profound loss and found that bridge, found a way to get to the other side, back into a productive life that you actually enjoy living. And
Wow.
He is an amazing example of that.
Okay, so I want to play a real short video introducing both of you guys to our viewers and our listeners. And regardless of which platform you're watching us on, the E36 TV, Transfer TV, YouTube, LinkedIn, or 6-Day Live platform, welcome to the show. If you want to be part of the conversation, all you have to do is just go to the comments on whichever platform that you're watching us on. Ask any question that you might have, and promise you we'll get you an answer. Or you can pick up the phone and dial 1-888-344-1170. Again, that's 1-888-344-1170. KCBQ AM 1170 Answer FM 96.1 in San Diego. But I want to play this quick introduction so our viewers can see. Wow. That's absolutely fantastic. I got one quick question before I turn it over to the host. Azim, can you tell our audience a little bit more about you, where you grew up, why you're so passionate about what you do, and what is your mission, and the things that you're doing to, bring relief to others?
Well, JC, you just asked him every question for the whole interview. Let's give them to him one at a time. But Azim, I think it would be great if you tell everybody a bit about you, so they have an understanding who you were as you came into this situation that life cast your way.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Dr. Cooley, and thank you, Paula, and good to see you again.
You too.
So I was born in Kenya, although my roots are Eastern. And after going through high school, I spent 6 years in England as a college student studying mathematics and finance, and returned back to Kenya, took over a family business. And unfortunately, a few years after that, Idi Amin, which was a dictator in neighboring Uganda, expelled everybody that was not indigenous. Although we were not expelled from Kenya, it was very uncomfortable because a lot of my family on my mother's side was in Uganda. I was married at that time, and my in-laws were too. So it very much felt like it was happening to all of us. And they had to leave the country in a short 90 days and moved to all parts of the world as refugees. So all of our wealth and money was invested in a family company, which was an automobile agency that my father started that I took over. So I had to essentially first sell the business, which was hard to do because everybody that was with money was leaving like we were planning to live.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, I had a client who was indigenous and was able to sell the business, complex. It took me about 18 months. And then I emigrated to Canada 50 years ago and soon moved to the United States, starting a new life. And I have a daughter and my son that I lost, who was actually born here, thinking that I would build a better future for them. And it was ironic that I left with my family, escaping violence, because we were a targeted minority. Mm. And everything was well. It took me a while to get settled in a new country, new language, new culture. It wasn't easy. But after a few years, I was able to assimilate well and had a good life. And traveled the world, mostly worked in international finance. I speak a half a dozen languages. And what changed my life was 30 years ago. My son was a student at San Diego State University. He was a gifted writer and a talented photographer and aspired someday to work for National Geographic. And while he was a student, he worked as a pizza delivery man on weekends, on Fridays and Saturdays, to make extra money for school.
Azim, can you hold that thought? Because I don't want the audience to miss any of that. We got to take a station break right now. But when we come back, we're going to pick it up. And please go into it and explain all of this. I think this is so important. And so whichever platform you're watching this on, if you want to be part of the conversation, go to the comments, ask any question that you might have. I promise you we'll get you an answer. Or pick up the phone, dial 1-888-344-1170. It's your life. And we'll talk to you shortly after the break.
There's more stories of greatness to help you overcome adversity coming up on It's Your Life with James Cooley.
A black man's point of
Listen up. It's Dr. James J.C. Cooley. Yeah. It's the James Cooley
making a difference in the lives of the youth in our community. You can give online at CooleyFoundation.org. Remember that every donation makes a difference regardless of size. The J.C. Cooley Foundation thanks you in advance for your contribution.
Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet, the true life coming of age story by James J.C. Cooley. Using humor, wit, and engaging storytelling, James paints a picture about his arrival in a rural Deep South town and realization that life would never be the same. Cooley lays out his struggle to adjust from city life to country life and back again, sharing his hard-earned lessons to educate, encourage, and enlighten our next generation of leaders and heroes. Get your copy of Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet by James J.C. Cooley, available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold.
Let's go, let's go, let's go. It's the James Cooley Show.
Hello. Welcome back to the James Cooley Show. And I tell you what, just like I mentioned earlier, we're kicking off a new series. Paula Shaw is the host of today's show, and she will be for at least the next 4 weeks. And we got an absolutely fantastic guest. Today we're talking about the bridge of forgiveness. And I tell you, just listening to this young man in the identification stage, meaning that the first segment is all about getting an opportunity to know the guests. And I tell you, I already touched my heart already, but I'm going to turn it back over to Paula Shaw. And if you want to be part of the conversation, a couple of ways. You can go to the platform that you're watching us on, ask any questions, or pick up the phone and call the studio, KCBQ 817. So 1-888-344-1170. Paula, it's yours.
All righty. Our guest today is Azim Khamisa, who suffered the agonizing loss of his son, Tariq. And he was just telling us about Tariq and how that loss occurred. And Azim, if you would just recap that and talk about it so people understand how it happened. And then I really want to know, what did you feel? What was it like from the moment you got the news of this tragedy?
Yes, so he was lured to a bogus address by a youth gang in San Diego, close to where he went to work. He worked for a local Italian restaurant delivering pizzas. They gave the right apartment building address, but the wrong apartment number. And it was his turn to arrive at the destination. He knocked on many doors and found out nobody had ordered the pizzas. So he got back to his car, put the pizzas in the trunk of his car, climbed into the driver's side seat. And as he was about to leave the scene of the crime, he was accosted by 4 youth gang members. 3 of them were 14, and the leader of the gang was 18.
Oh my God.
That gave the order, Busting Bones. Most gang members have nicknames. His real name is Tony, and he fired one shot from a 9mm handgun, which came through the driver's side window. It entered my son's body under the left shoulder blade, traveled across the upper part of his chest, and it actually exited from his right armpit. But as the coroner explained to me afterwards, he said the bullet followed a perfect path. A perfect path. I thought that was an interesting choice of words.
Mm-hmm.
But he said to me, Mr. Khamisa, I'm not trying to be insensitive. We do not see a path like this very often. Mm-hmm. And what it means in my lingo is it destroyed all the vital organs in Tariq's body. And Tariq died a couple of minutes later, drowning in his own blood over a lousy pizza at the age of 20.
Oh my God. I don't know how, when with this kind of a senseless, crazy occurrence that took your son's life, how did you go on, Azim? How was it those first couple of weeks?
Oh, devastating when you think about it. It was a senseless, random event, a tragedy that never goes away. There's nothing more complicated for a parent than to lose a child. There's never a day that I don't think of Tariq many times. The overwhelming grief of family, the total confusion as you try to absorb a new hideous reality. I've never felt pain like this in my life. And the hardest thing, one of the hardest things I've ever had to do was to call his mother. She lived in Seattle and I live in San Diego, where he went to school. But think about it. How do you tell a mother she's never going to see her son again? Or hear him laugh? Or give him a hug? I mean, how do you do that?
I have no idea. I can imagine.
And it took me a while, and I remember when I finally told her what had happened to Tariq, she let out this loud, piercing shriek. She hit the floor. I could actually hear her hit the floor on the phone. And I finished her broken conversations with one of her brothers. Thank God she wasn't by herself.
Yeah.
And when I retell this story, which I've done often in my work, I can hear her scream in my inner ear. And it probably haunts me for the rest of my life. But sometimes in deep tragedy, there is a spark of clarity. As JC mentioned, tragedies happen all the time. That's not a revelation. We lose a young person to gang violence and gun violence every hour in the United States.
Oh, God.
The richest nation in the world. What is a revelation, I believe, is that during this deep trauma, there is a spark of clarity. Every saint has suffered the dark night of the soul. And that spark of clarity in my tragedy, and I practice as a Sufi Muslim, I meditate 2 hours a day now. I used to meditate an hour a day. And what I downloaded from a higher power, that there are victims at both ends of the gun. The killer was 14 years old. And it didn't come from my intellect or my loving heart, because I don't believe us mortals are capable of it. But it was a download from a higher power. And I really didn't understand the significance of that. But 9 months later, I created a foundation to honor Tariq and to address this horrific statistics of us losing such young souls on a daily basis. And what I saw is that, sure, Tariq was the victim of the 14-year-old, but I also saw that 14-year-old Tony was a victim of society, of American society, because this mayhem of youth violence doesn't happen in other first world countries. It's very much an American phenomenon. In fact, the Economist, which is a reputed the magazine, did a study, and they took 25 first world countries, added all the kids that die in those 25 countries, and they took the total and multiplied that by 11. That is how many we lose in the United States of America.
Oh, my word. That's just
it doesn't have to be this way. And the question I ask, Paula, is how did we create a society where children kill children? Because societies just don't happenstance. Right. Every one of us who is an American is reflected in the society we've created. And we think that we are a civil society. But children killing children is not a mark of a civil society.
No.
So what I saw here is that the enemy wasn't the 14-year-old. The real culprit was the societal peer pressure that forced many young men and women to fall through the crack and then get involved with gangs and crimes and drugs and alcohol and weapons. That's the real culprit.
Yes.
You could take the position, he killed my one and only son, he should be hung from the highest pole. How does it make a better society?
Exactly.
So I somehow had compassion for the 14-year-old. I saw him as a victim as well. And 9 months later, I founded the Tariq Khamisa Foundation with the initial mission of stopping kids from killing kids by breaking the cycle of youth violence. And we essentially had three mandates. First was to save lives of children because we lose so many, and important to do. Our second mandate was to empower them with the right choices so they don't fall to the crack.
Right.
And our third was to teach the principles of nonviolence, of accountability, of empathy, of compassion, of forgiveness, of peace building. And I recognize, and I started the foundation with the premise that violence is a learned behavior. No child is born violent. Tony wasn't born violent.
Right.
But if you accept that as an axiom or as a truism, then nonviolence can also be a learned behavior. But you have to teach it. Kids are not going to learn nonviolence through osmosis. And where do they see and where do they learn nonviolence? I mean, it shocked me, and maybe it will shock you and your viewers, that by the time our children enter grade 1, they're 6 years old, they've seen over 100,000 images of violence.
Oh my God.
Think about it. If it bleeds, it leads. Most of the news is negative, unlike yours. And video games and movies. And we have 400 million guns for 320 million people in America. And of those 400 million guns, 20 million are AK-15s, which is used in every school shooting and recently was used in trying to assassinate President Trump. Why do we have this kind of arms? We're not living on the front line of a war zone.
Exactly.
So, I was pretty shocked to learn all of this. And the foundation is also now in its 30th year.
Oh.
And we've reached 2 million kids. And not only are we teaching these important social emotional skills of resilience and accountability, empathy, compassion. Forgiveness is a big part of our story. And many of the kids have been able to take this to heart. One of the students I spoke to, she was at Bishop's, which is a very high-end school.
Can you hold that thought? We're going to take a station break. But this is so interesting. I believe that, everything that you're talking about is true, and we need to take heed and do what we can to make sure that we educate our youth and our young adults and a way of getting these guns off the street. I tell you what, if you want to be part of the conversation, all you have to do is just go to the platform that you're watching us on, ask any question that you might have, or pick up the phone and dial 1-888-344-1170. It's your life, and we'll see you shortly after the break.
There's more stories of greatness to help you overcome adversity coming up on It's Your Life with James Cooley.
Craving a slice of Chicago right?
Really get a chance to know who you are. And once you know who you are, you truly know who you are, love who you are. Love who you are. You're a masterpiece. Love who you are. Love who you were born to be. Love me some me. That's what I'm talking about. When you leave high school, you gotta know today or tomorrow, hopefully today, what your plans are. Hopefully, there is no bad decision unless there is no plan. Create, collaborate, commit with confidence. Commit with what? Commit with what? In everything that you do. Let's go, let's go, let's go. It's the James Cooley Show. It's your life. Dr. James JC Cooley. All right.
There's much truth in a journey that ain't over yet, as all of us journey through life's precious gift of time. In the new audio version of his book, Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet, you can join James as he shares his true life story of struggle and success in America. It's both a cautionary tale and a roadmap to achieving the American dream. This is a must listen for anyone who thinks they're stuck in life or needs to understand that their current situation is not their final destination. Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet is the unfiltered truth to provide hope for the future by challenging you to refuse to become a victim of life's circumstance and dare to become an overcomer, because a bigger, better, and more impactful life awaits you. Get the new audio version of his book, Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet by Dr. James Cooley on Amazon or wherever books are sold.
Hello, back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and I tell you, just listening to this young gentleman right here tell the story. I mean, it touches everybody, especially with a loss of a kid. Loss of a kid through whatever. Michelle and I just suffered. I not share this with you, Azim. We just suffered the loss of our daughter 8 weeks ago, and that feeling is, I'm not telling you, it's not going away. I mean, and I can even say I believe that a tragedy of gun violence or whatever it's a tough one, and many who have not experienced anything like that, they don't know. Therefore, I think your story is so great, and I want to commend Paula for bringing guests like you to share their story, because there's lots and lots of people around that need to hear how you feel, what your thoughts are, and whatever ideals that we have to help bring everybody together. And Paula, I love you, and I'm turning it back over to you.
Thank you so much, JC. Azim suffered what I often call a why God loss. Like, it made no sense. If someone dies of an illness or you've had a little time to adjust, it's one thing. But when something happens suddenly and senselessly, like this did, with a random shooting of somebody who was doing a gang initiation, that's the kind of thing that sometimes stops people in their tracks. They get angry, they get bitter, and they just can't go on in their lives. They have a really, really tough time believing that there's any reason to go on because of this senseless, violent way that they lost this being that they love so much. And so I really love that you shared, Azim, that this kind of came to you in an intuitive download, that there was something more. There was something more you had to do. You had to take this horrible tragedy and turn it into something that would help other people. I once had the good fortune to work with Candy Lightner, who lost her daughter to a drunk driver. And she, like you, turned that into Mothers Against Drunk Drivers so she could help other people not lose their children. And so I am in such awe of who you are and what you've done. And I would love it if you would share with our listeners how you came to reach out to the grandfather of Tony, and what you two did together, because that's miraculous.
Absolutely. Soon after I started the foundation, I reached out to the grandfather, Tony's grandfather, plus Felix. And I told him, I'm not here screaming revenge or retribution because your grandson killed my son. Rather, I'm here in the spirit of compassion and empathy and forgiveness, because what I really see here is we both lost a son. Tony lived with his grandfather and calls him daddy. And I can't bring my son back from the dead. He's gone. And I've started this foundation with the lofty mission of stopping kids from killing kids. It's a big job. And I can't do this by myself. The real reason I reached out to you is to ask for your help. Will you help me? I would never have met Ples had Tony not taken Tariq's life.
Right.
We are different in many ways. He's worked as an enterprise manager. He's a Baptist from the South. I'm a Sufi Muslim. He's African American. My roots are Eastern. Although I always kid him and say, I'm the real African American because I was born in Africa. You were not, you know. And he was very quick to take my hand of forgiveness. And the first thing he said to me is, thank you for reaching out to me. Also a very spiritual man. As soon as I found out that my grandson was responsible for your son's death, I went into the prayer closet, praying that I get to meet you. So thanks for reaching out.
Wow.
Precious condolences in a very heartfelt way. And said, of course, I'll help you. So we've been together 30 years. He's as close to me as my own brother.
Oh, my.
We are the same age and born the same year. And he is one of the wisest human beings I have met. He has a master's degree in urban development, had a good home for his grandson. I had no clue his grandson was gang involved. But to come to your opening of this particular segment, let me underscore what you just said, that Candy Lightner, started mad, found meaning in her tragedy. And I think if you want to build up on that a little bit, to say that I believe we all have a spiritual purpose. Sometimes it's complicated to know what that is.
Yes.
And I think the universe nudges us towards our spiritual purpose. Obviously, I was born in this world not to be an international financial expert. My grandfather wasn't born to be, doing urban development.
Right.
There was a bigger purpose in our life. And sometimes it comes through you in a tragedy.
Yes.
But I believe we get nudges all the time, because I think that that our spiritual purpose doesn't live in the material world. It lives in providing service and benefit to others, especially our younger ones. And I was able to, I've written 5 books. My first was Murder to Forgiveness. The second was Forgiveness to Fulfillment, and then Fulfillment to Peace. Because the work that I've done in the aftermath of my son's tragedy, I've personally given over 1,000 presentations to young people, over 1 million kids. And it's been a very fulfilling work. I was trying to tell you that I met this young lady. She just graduated from Bishop's, which is in La Jolla, a very expensive school. And after I spoke to the entire faculty and 800 students, there was a long line, and she was one of them, and said, Mr. Khamisa, you changed my life. And I said, well, tell me more. She says, when I was in 7th grade, I was 13 years old, you came and spoke at my inner city school. And I was so moved with your story, because I was put in foster care at the age of 8. I forgave my biological mother for all the pain that she had caused me. I forgive all of my foster parents for all the confusion they added to my life. And as a 13-year-old, I decided to go on a different trajectory. I won scholarship to Bishop's, which is a very expensive school. It's 100 kids and 200 faculty, so the ratio is 1-4. Most of them end up in Ivy League. I just graduated, have a free ride at UCLA.
Wow.
It would surprise me if she changes the foster care system. This lady was so determined. But what shifted her life, when she was 13, the ability to forgive. So, having now given, I have over 150,000 letters from kids that I do know in my hearts of hearts that teaching accountability, empathy, compassion, and forgiveness
hold that thought. We got to take another station break. Want to come back and want to discuss the 150,000 letters and all the other things that you're doing, and also want to discuss, your feelings. I'm talking about we all have feelings. What drives us? What keeps us going? And I think you already talked about that a little bit. Tell you what, if you want to be part of the conversation, it's not too late. All you do is go to the platform you're watching us on, ask them the questions, or pick up the phone and dial 1-888-344-1170. It's your life, and we'll see you shortly after the break.
There's more stories of greatness to help you overcome adversity coming up on It's Your Life with James Cooley.
A black man's point of view is the newest.
Craving a slice of Chicago right here in Temecula wine country? Then dive into legendary Chicago deep dish style pizza at Rosati's Pizza Pub. Piled high with gooey cheese, rich tomato sauce, and your favorite toppings, Rosati's delivers the taste of the Windy City right to your table or front door. Enjoy the cozy pub atmosphere and an impressive selection of Temecula wines. Come on down to Rosati's Pizza Pub for your slice of Chicago right here on Rancho California Road, or order online at myrosatis.com. Rosati's, where Chicago deep dish pizza meets Temecula charm.
Dr. James J.C. Cooley. The James Cooley Show. It's your life. The James Cooley Show. It's your life. That's right.
Heaven abounds in you, enlightens, uplifts, inspires, and invites you to live a life that's engaged, joyous, and limitless, the sweet spot of life. Take this journey in oneness. We are and have all that God, the infinite creative source of the universe, is. You are infinite potentiality, and the kingdom of heaven is within you. Heaven abounds in you.
Yeah. Dr. James J.C. Cooley. The James Cooley Show. It's your life. Yeah.
J.C. Cooley, using humor, wit, and engaging storytelling, James paints a picture about his arrival in a rural deep South town and realization that life would never be the same. Cooley lays out his struggle to adjust from city life to country life and back again, sharing his hard-earned lessons to educate, encourage, and enlighten our next generation of leaders and heroes. Get your copy of Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet by James J.C. Cooley, available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold.
Craving a slice of Chicago right here in Temecula wine country? Then dive into legendary Chicago deep dish style pizza at Rosati's Pizza Pub. Piled high with gooey cheese, rich tomato sauce, and your favorite toppings, Rosati's delivers the taste of the Windy City right to your table or front door. Enjoy the cozy pub atmosphere and an impressive selection of Temecula wines. Come on down to Rosati's Pizza Pub for your slice of Chicago right here on Rancho California Road, or order online at myrosatis.com. Rosati's, where Chicago deep dish pizza meets Temecula charm.
Dr. James.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life. And hey, Todd, what are your thoughts so far on the show?
A great show, great guest. I mean, it's such a tragedy what happened to Azim's son, but so amazing. From that tragedy, he built that foundation, and he's changing people's lives and stopping this violence. So it's amazing that something so magnificent can come from such a tragedy.
Well said. Well said.
Hey, Paula, we got people that are making comments. I'm going to turn it back over to you. We got Steve Taylor just said forgiveness is the key component to freedom.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think forgiveness is really the way you let yourself out of prison, because so often forgiveness doesn't change the other person's life, but it definitely changes yours. But in this case, forgiveness also changed the other person's life. And Azim, I think an important piece of the story I don't want to miss. I would love it if before you go into these fabulous programs you're doing through the foundation now, if you share with our listeners the fact that you actually went to the prison and met with Tony. I think that's a big part of the story. So would you share that?
Yeah, so I met Tony 5 years after the tragedy. So he was 19 at New Folsom Prison. And that was a very cathartic. It took me 5 years and many thousand hours of meditation to come eyeball to eyeball with the person who took my son's life. Obviously, that is a hard thing to do.
Oh, yes.
Sure, you can acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
But I recognized at some point I had to come eyeball to eyeball with Tony to complete my journey of forgiveness. And I asked the grandfather to go with me the first time I met Tony because I wanted him to introduce him. I told him I need alone time with Tony because he was the last person to see my son. And you are his grandfather. I don't want him to be defensive because I have some tough questions for him.
Uh-huh.
And I asked him those tough questions and he was able to answer them. But the seminal moment in that meeting was when we locked eyeballs. I'm looking in his eyes, he's looking in my eyes, and we held that glance for almost an uncomfortable time. I'm looking in his eyes to try and find a murderer, and I didn't. I was able to climb through his eyes and touch his humanity. That I thought that the spark in him was no different than the spark in you or your audience or me. Yes. I wasn't expecting that. I could tell that my hand of forgiveness had transformed him because I'd been working with his grandfather for a good 4 years before I met him. So he knew that I'd forgiven him. And I could see it transformed him because he was polite, he was articulate, he was well-mannered, he was remorseful, and he didn't portray any of the typical attitudes of a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't expecting that. So at that point, I told him, Tony, you know, I've forgiven you, but I want you to know when you come out of the prison, you can come and work at the Tariq Khamisa Foundation with your grandfather and me. And as I left the prison, I remember clearly, because he's 43 now, he was 19 years old, was 24 years ago. But I still remember that my cadence leaving the prison was a lot bouncier than when I walked in. As one of your audiences said, that freedom comes from forgiveness.
Yes.
And the preeminent thought in my mind was, why did I wait 5 years? The next day, the grandfather called me and said, Azim, that meeting you had with Tony yesterday totally transformed him, because he would tell me, Daddy, I'm not going to make it in prison. But when you gave him some love and some hope, he told me, as you were leaving, Daddy, that's a special man. I killed his one and only son. Not only has he forgiven me, he's offered me a job. I'm not worthy of it, but I'm going to try. So he aced his GED at 22, 94%. I stayed with him for 20 years, from 19 to 39, advocating for his release. Finally, I was there. He finally got parole in front of the parole board when he was 39 years old. I was at the parole hearing, and the commissioner was in tears. He says, Mr. Khamisa, I've been doing this work for 25 years. I've never had the victim's father advocate for the offender's release. I said, no, release him. He's got work to do, not behind bars. You can see not the same person he was when he was 14. He can come join the foundation. I will vouch for his behavior because he can save a lot of kids. And you know what? He won parole, which you never do the first time you go there. So he's volunteering for the foundation since 2019, the last 5 years, just like his grandfather and I have for 30 years. And we are often on stage. And he tells the kids, when I was 11, I joined a gang. When I was 14, I killed Mr. Khamisa's son. I've spent the last umpteen years in prison. I wish I could turn the clock back How many kids? Because we reach tens of thousands of kids every year. How many kids that are thinking about joining a gang? Because we specialize from 4th to 10th grade, because Tony joined the gang in 6th, took Tariq's life in 8th. How many kids that are in that space that are thinking about joining a gang will change their mind when they hear Tony's testimony?
Yes.
It just tells you what is possible, that forgiveness can lead us to peace. Whereas we've tried this eye for an eye idea for over 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Where has it got us? Look at how divided we are in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about civil war. They talk about a third world war. So I continue to spread forgiveness, because I truly believe. Desmond Tutu, I got an award with him. I've met him many times. He passed away. But he has a good book. He says, without forgiveness, we don't have a future.
Boy, isn't that the truth? And with forgiveness, I think what you have told us today and taught us today is that with forgiveness, not only can we get to the other side of grief, but miracles, flat out miracles are possible. What you're doing to me is just miraculous.
Yeah, I mean, not only do you get on the other side, but when you do, you land on higher ground.
Yes.
That I think that I was able to find purpose for my tragedy. And of course, I miss Tariq, but everything that has manifested in my life over the last 30 years is way beyond my wildest dreams.
Wow. We down to the last minute and a half of the show. But Paula, I would love to get this guy back on the show again to talk a little bit more about this. And doesn't have to be on Beyond Grief, but just get him on the show to share a lot more about this.
Oh, yeah. These programs that his foundation is going into the school and teaching peace building and conflict resolution and all these great things. And I love it that you two, I don't know if you even, well, you know it now, but you two have so much in common. JC also has a foundation that helps young people, that, keep them in school and make their lives better. So I just think this is a perfect union. All of us.
I would love to hook up with him, and won't be sharing his information. But I want to thank you, hey Paula. This is the beginning. It's just week 1. This is absolutely fantastic. Azim, you're fantastic. I'd like to thank Dr. Michelle Cooley for putting together another outstanding show. I'd like to thank KCBQ, our studios in La Jolla, for always being there. Most importantly, I'd like to thank our viewers and listeners for tuning in to the James Cooley Show, Monday through Friday. And I tell you, always dream big, think big, and be big at everything you do. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. It's your life, and we'll see you then.